All right. Hello, welcome. It's March 22nd, 2026. This is Daniel Friedman, InferAnt stream 18.1. This stream is going to use the doxology template repo, maybe to be moved to an institute repo in the future, and explore this self-generating package/paper, as always in active debugging mode. We will discuss topics like reproducibility and scientific workflow for papers with different amounts of formalism and prose. Look through the overall structure of the repo, the top level infrastructure, methods, orchestration, documents, and the project scale, the application of thin orchestrator and separation of consideration for different parts of the code base and the projects. Look at running multiple projects with the top level run commands and see what people put in the chat for ideas or questions. To begin, you can probably just check the most recent version of the repo and use whatever setup methods are hopefully properly documented at that time. Okay. Where we're going is rendering a PDF that looks like this with color of your choice, linking to different sections of the paper, configurable typesetting, automatic numbering, hypertext, code reference, inserting images. However, also running that scientific code to get that output. Lots of ways to enter into this. We'll start with the overall structure of the repo, then look at the project scale, and look at the in looking at the project. Hopefully somebody will have suggested something in the chat for just some project, and we will see how far one-shotting in cursor and or anti-gravity, just a suggestion for a project, gets. So delete some of these. Okay, top level of the repo. Docs is documentation for the repo itself. Infrastructure has the modules of code, methods, definitions for each of these sub-modules of code. This is kind of like the toolkit for the factory of research replication that's about to be orchestrated. And there's a few general folder strategies, and everything being presented here is just one way to do it. I eagerly look towards other simpler, different, better methods. So just sharing where my explorations have gotten me and learning from different patterns, and looking forward to people forking and coming up with other approaches. Agents and a README at every folder level, and skill files at the sub-module or finer scale folder levels. Maybe eventually these two will be unneeded because you could just iterate across a whole repo and say, put a skill file in or skill to generate skills. But it helps with some of the coherence of the different methods. The infrastructure methods are tested with the top level test suite. The infra tests is the same modules as the infrastructure unit tests, and the integration are combining across different modules. Scripts in general are going to be thin orchestrators, so ideally not defining any major or any methods in these scripts themselves, just calling upon methods, in this case defined in the infrastructure layer. And when you run this, there's two entry points from the top level. Run and secure run. And they're both going to do basically the same thing. Secure run is going to additionally apply the steganography module. But we'll just work mainly with run for now, unless maybe we'll try later. From the top level, /run.sh, and a text menu will come up. And it will give options based upon scanning for what projects are in the projects folder. So also I have some untracked folders that are their own private repos that won't be used today probably for projects archive and projects in progress. Projects just itself is going to be kind of like the projects that are on the burner. So you could have one or more. They're kind of like separately standalone projects. And there's code project, which is just a simple placeholder project with example documented of the project structure. And then in this case, the recently published paper for this repo as a manuscript to understand how the package sort of rendered this and ran the analysis and rendered the manuscript. And the output is just a secondary copying. When you run /run, there are options to set up the environment and do each step by itself from scripts, or run the full pipeline. Usually I don't run plus infra tests because that's a very large test suite, but it's good to have 100% working, or if anything is not working on your system, confirming that the test suite is all updated is a good way to debug or rebug there. Plus or minus LLM here means that there's a post-publication, so to speak, review of different personaed LLM using local LLM calls. And then the fastest option, which is just running the projects themselves end-to-end, is the all project fast, which is just without the infra test, without the LLM analysis. So I'll pick option D. And first, clear the output folder. So it's going to iterate over each of the projects in the project folder. Each of them have these following folders: SRC for the code, tests for the testing of the SRC code, scripts to orchestrate the SRC code, output for where everything is going to get saved and rendered into, manuscript, modular markdown files and configuration files, and docs within the project, which is technical documentation for the project. So the goal is that each of these projects is completely standalone, and the repo template level .run.sh will just orchestrate the scripts which have validated standalone functionality composing the source code methods. And the top level run.sh will run the test suite, the data analysis, and any other needed methods for the project. Then look to the manuscript markdowns and the typesetting configuration, and then render it in to the final output, which has some degrees of freedom for typesetting. Most. Probably many of the basic ones. Maybe there's other typesetting approaches, but margins, different colors, font size, inserting hard-coded and generated images, and a few other interesting aspects, like injecting the variables in, having equations and injecting variables directly into the manuscript. So when you re-render the manuscript, it has updated values. Here's the previous run.sh running, going, iterating through, and the different output types within each project. There are the citation information, the raw data from the analyses of the paper, any additional documentation, the images, the figures of the paper, the optional LLM review analyses, the run log of the rendering, which could have any warnings, re-outputting the manuscript markdowns, the PDF, and all of the LaTeX debugging and other formats, reports, any validation reports or additional technical material that are included, any simulation data, then the paper in slides, depending on the you could make section length very small to make more of a slide presentation. But going to a slide, LaTeX and the web, HTML, format of the paper. Okay. So that was the completion of top level running /run.sh, iterates over the projects in the project folder using the orchestration from the repo layer of the scripts, orchestrating the infrastructure methods tested here. First, runs the outer loop to confirm the functionality of the template repo. Then these code project and template projects are like control positive and templates for starting a new project. So anyone can suggest in the live chat, or I'll think of something random in a minute for some other project, and we'll explore creating a few parallel projects and kind of one to few shotting, bootstrapping off the format of the control positives that are documented and using that to explore different prose and qualitative and quantitative research seeds. All right, we'll just start, but I'll wait one more minute for anyone to write anything, but I'll start with write a prompt now for starting with as positive control projects convey that format, and then write the prompt to one shot, make a new project along those lines, appending only then the suggestion someone has for idea of project. All right, meanwhile, let's see if the steganographic methods are working right now. /secure run. Pick option D again. delete output folder. Thank you, Joel Neer. Anti-gravity, at least currently, has a very high level of using the Claude Sonnet Opus 4.6 and the Gemini 3.1. So I'm using both cursor and anti-gravity, just overlapping, keeping both within a sort of utility balanced cost, kind of trading off month to month as different offers and things happen. Okay, here we go. We'll start a chat. Control L, add this prompt. In make a new project with many subsection documents and all modular methods and tested properly, really. A project and use a project exploring concordances of what? Exploring we'll set up a few of these. I'm just waiting if anyone writes anything in the chat. Start with making a holistic report of an area and rendering it into updated handbook. A project exploring using the methods to render a 16-page newspaper, traditional style and layout. Project exploring different density of gases and fluids and density of insect bodies and speculative analysis. A project exploring how unlikely certain kinds of special numbers, irrational, transcendental, are to be close to certain integer ratios statistically. Okay. So 4 parallel projects starting up in cursor there. Right. We'll start one more in this folder using example of make a whole new project. Just for virtual environment setup and modular interactive active inference browser-based games with standalone math package. Use at perplexity everything. Anti-gravity only has one chat ongoing on the right, but cursor has multiple. And I've explored and used some of the terminal agents, but we'll probably just keep it on the chat agents here, just to have a better sense of what's going on. Okay. So we'll just play around here for a few minutes. See if we can keep each of these projects, get them to a few prompts down the road, run from the top all the renderings. If they each take 10 or 60 seconds, we should get through a few iterations and just sort of work all the errors and warnings out and just show how we can rapidly develop these projects in parallel. So each of them, let's look into the newspaper. So projects, traditional newspaper. We have the inheritance of the top level structure, the general folder hygiene of the README and the agents, the SRC methods, which can be Python in a flat folder, or there can be sub modules within SRC. The scripts that orchestrate the SRC methods, the tests that test them, and here manuscript sections. So we'll just, it's and then here's the agent's progression on that project. So sequentially making those templated files and folders. We'll just run again and see if it is, it may not be done, but in the agentic loop, it will know that it should try to run the end-to-end setup, test, render, validate, possibly with these, yeah, using from the infrastructure repo level code, using the validation methods as a terminal command to call to give a pass test that the Markdown are compliant with what is expected to render properly. So being able to call these dozens to hundreds of tools and write very modular files given a work plan with minimal intervention, huge game changer. And those can be dispatched for Hermes, OpenClaw, Codex, etc. So here is the agent calling the scripts from the top level of the repo, which are the thin orchestrators of infrastructure methods, running the scripts with just the -- project flag, the command line option for traditional newspaper. So that's going to run the stages that run.sh is going to run for them sequentially, headlessly. Here running agentically for and able to then have the logging. So here it's 11/16 completed processing. We'll go to output folder. Check some of this. Just while it's look at the other ones. So this is a little bit like playing a few epistemic horses at once. Probably not the most deep work-esque way to work, but a fun mode nonetheless. When working with template, usually I keep just the one project that I'm actually working on, plus one or two of the control positive short projects, just so that I can, from the top level, run my project of interest, have a configurability set up with subsetting to use like 1% of the data, like if it were genetics or genomics analysis, using 1% of the samples or 1% of the loci. And so it runs fast, confirming that the output numbers, the sample size, the statistics get injected into the manuscript based upon the plain text output from the validated analysis. Build out the methods and tests on the small subset of the data, or if it's a low data paper, just the whole data set each time, even if it takes a few minutes, and running it, looking at the final PDF rendering, asking, writing manually how it could be different, going into the manuscript files, manually editing them. Keeping it functional end to end. So, like we'll see from these that we're spinning up now, even the very first generative AI produced draft can still lead to a totally functional PDF rendering. Like, okay, here's a newspaper. Oh, 3 panels. So, no, it's a start. It still is rendering. But it keeps the final form in mind an interesting topic to return to is, I think, what forms are beyond and outside of that rendering. Like, as we explore this and other modular document production methods, reading and writing for science and meta-science, the rendering, separating it from the underlying methods becomes kind of a core theme. Okay, here's the special numbers paper. We'll check if these methods were properly injected and what it all means, but, you know, first shot. Some LaTeX rendering, those can be just say, oh, in this section it looks like that. Or anti-gravity has a Chrome browser plugin, so it can look at the HTML and the PDF in a closed loop and go through several rounds of visual review. So here we'll look at that. Special numbers, results. So these look hard-coded, so it hasn't yet injected, but then prompting and documenting and enforcing that everything is configurable and modular, and no values are hard-coded, no section names are hard-coded, no configuration parameters are hard-coded. A future step is even having the writing component generated downstream of the results for certain parts. So, for example, an introduction section could be hard-coded with citations, maybe even pre-registered. Then the methods and the results can be strongly enforced to be injectable with the configuration of the actual sample size run and the actual statistics of that run and the figures generated from that run. And then in the discussion, like, right now, the natural language part is static. I'll say, on this many samples, this percentage change happened. But to kind of interpret it, that could also be generated downstream from changing numbers. Like, imagine if it was, you know, the initial evidence or the subset was a positive relationship, but it ended up being negative. That changes how the interpretation and the discussion would bear on what else had been discovered. Okay, here we go. So the projects are starting to finish up their first round. Okay. And then I'm going to paste this into each of them. Comprehensively improve and add methods, testing, documentation, manuscript, sections, and files to this project you are working on. And that's kind of a message that you can poke it with essentially after a completion or during. Right. This one is working on the active inference application. So this one will have you can have a stub source code that's just a pass through to confirm that there's not intended to be anything there, and just have manuscript manually written sections. So that would be like using this template repo as a manually written type processing suite, all the way on through reproducible analysis or scalable analysis of different areas of research, on through kind of generative research writing methods, and including different meta science features into the pipeline, like pulling literature, different API calls, different LLMs for writing, different renderings of final artifacts, nano publications. Okay. So we got that one. Newspaper, area handbook, special numbers, density. Huh. Clear the output folder. Run again. So, skipping the infra test layer, going to the first of the 7 projects, cleaning the output directories, creating step 2 of 8 within the project, within this active inference app, running the setup methods. Step 3, running the project level testing, logging the project level test, collecting project level errors. Either allowing the project to proceed or not proceed, depending on an error threshold in the test suite. Here, continuing on, not having a strict threshold, allowing failing tests, and continuing to the analysis phase. Running those orchestration scripts, which ostensibly in the testing phase, all the methods invoked have been validated. Getting errors, getting useful error messages. Like here we can see, oh, it's installing the SciPy dependency because the setup methods as orchestrated did not include the proper setup of SciPy. So now it's figuring out how to do that, and it's going through those tests and fixing those failures and just going one by one until the entire test suite works, and then just adding more methods, adding more tests, fixing the tests. Getting the errors from the orchestrated methods. And then here, popping up this app. Let's see if it does anything. Okay. Moving uncertainty in an environment, different beliefs. Here now, popping up in a different browser. This glowing window is anti-gravity taking control of the browser, getting the browser information from the website, taking visual screenshots. So we'll just let that work over there. I'm going to pull Active Inference app into projects in progress and have anti-gravity improve it. Completely improve this app and all methods and orchestration, validation, animation, documentation. Because the agent can work on it, it doesn't really care whether its parent project folder is what it's called. It's as long as it's projects in progress. Because the running the app kind of interferes with the run sh loop. So that would kind of, you could use this for general project orchestration. However, the pipeline is intended to be more like scientific publication, even if it takes hours or days to run the job. So we'll just now we run run.sh again, clear output. Just delete that folder. Now, run.sh, the first project it finds is the area study. So it's going to render the sections of the manuscript plus orchestrate whatever source code and scripts are there. So we'll see where it gets. Here's rendering those sections step by step. Okay. Newspaper coming along. Okay. Compiling the PDF, there may be a faster way. So if anyone has any ideas for how to make this faster, maybe render the subsections with parallel threads. Okay, so here's the warnings. This can be taken back in to improve the formatting, but here's what we get from that first render. short stubs. Starting point though. Then just moves on to the next paper. Okay, I'm gonna look at the live chat and back to the initial stream agenda, go through any last points, see if anyone has an idea for a project or a question. Otherwise, then we'll pretty much finish it. All right. There are a few dependencies to have installed related to the document processing. So if anybody sets it up on their end, give any feedback on how the initial setup can go, and also improving the LLM component, which is currently using Olama. I know there's other ways that we can use the LLM. And explore kind of cross-project methods, like with embeddings and other methods. Okay. Type 1 if you're here for the pipeline, 2 for the stego, 3 for both. Computational reproducibility is often a workflow problem. Manuscript, code data, and build steps drift because nothing in the toolchain enforces them as one system. At risk of the Tower of Babel style totalizing tool development mode, with each person's personal flavor added into that general pattern. That kind of fragmentation, at least in my own experience for projects, and having all these different informal, formal, manuscript draft, different code versioning, file names, some stuff on Git, others not. It's like a lot of context switching, a lot of possibilities, and cognitive load to just increment, and a lot of projects that therefore don't end up having the rigor, accessibility, applicability that they might if they were to be in a sort of more scaffolded, cultivated, augmented intelligence niche. So the idea of this template repo, which I guess we can look at the repo's history, but it's been versioning over the last few months, and continuing to revisit it just every time a new or a better model comes out. Checking the docs for coherence, using a to-do top-level file to coordinate incremental releases, so allowing increasingly capable models and processes to review the patterns and documentation and develop incremental improvement and refactoring recommendations, and using other sorts of augmented coding pointed on the template repo. So improving the general strategy while developing exemplar and published and deliverable only published or fully provided. So kind of like the difference between open/complete source. If you just take this whole folder as like a briefcase, it's going to have all the methods for reproducibility, all the generated data as used for that rendering of the PDF. So that's like the complete package. Or you could deliver just like the output file and keep some or all parts of the project reproducibility on your side private. Like drop in, have a project template that works for a given type of analysis, like a GWAS. Then copy it, modify the config, run it, provide the client or whatever with the output results or PDF render based upon the upstream version of the project template. No mock tests. This is sort of a issue that I'm sure people who have explored using LLMs for coding have hit up against, with the possibility of deceptive or innocently or silently misinformative methods and validations that really aren't, and hard-coded plain text fabrication that leads to subsequent confirmatory analyses, even despite massive structural, otherwise obvious, like, oh wait, you wanted me to analyze the data now? So really enforcing with complete holistic scope the real, validated, documented, tested, orchestrated, etc., all those different kinds of imperative commands and design principles, so that at the infrastructure level and at the project layer, there's just like a pervasive actuality to the analysis and discussion, as a reminder to keep things on the rails. Rendering to multiple targets, including a HTML website. So optimizing for a PDF might have a different, some different design strategies than for HTML, but you could kind of basically make something that looks good enough in both. And the infrastructure module steganography has basic methods for, with the secure run, to wrap and just apply at the very end these steganographic metadata modifying text overlay, QR, barcode, information in the footer and the header and things like that. Okay. All right, here's, okay, now, so that the red is the agents in anti-gravity. So here, all these JavaScript now doing action on the browser. Okay. Special numbers chugging away. Okay, close that one. I'll just do a few more minutes of random stuff, but if anyone has a comment or a question, go for it. All right, that one's done. That one's done. All right. So we still have the .run running there. Density project. This note connects ideal gas reference liquid densities to a reproducible, openly specified composite mixture model for arthropod scale effective density. Oh, it's writing very sparsely. Very interesting. Special number. Okay. Newspaper. All right, now we're talking. Very nice. Now, for the project, review and add as many manuscript files and sections, paragraphs, use browser and all tools and intelligence to keep relevant and concise, though word count realistically needs to double or more. Check all figures made properly and captions auto-numbered. Very informative analyses. The project is paste. Just pasting it in. Other orchestration methods, obviously, you can see how you could do this, some parts of this with conditional statements and iterating over folders, or using different database metadata or file content based data. Okay. Something's happening, right? But these values are not updating. So that's coming back to the idea of having the foundational methods very verified, because then it's like, how confident should we be about the variational free energy when it seems like it's not changing? So should we be confident in this simulation? But you wanted that to be calculated? So building in those kinds of validation expectations and stringency allows these larger multi-level packages to get built out in a more stigmergic aligned niche with some reuse patterns, which in your own setting and hands may be somewhat different design, but just some of these principles may be of use. All right, I'll bring in a question. Okay. Okay. I am 0 in binary. Not particularly for active inference, but do you think about souls? While active inference is for the mind, there is nothing that touches the soul. Yeah, great question. Interesting also to see that kind of soul.md approach and different proposed and resonant or alien cognitive partitions, thinking about perception, action, vision, soul, memory, anticipation. It with all of this agent design and kind of like wordplay, and shape play. Some of these external engineered forms and their resulting functions, I feel do come into that discussion that you point towards. Ensure all the visualizations and animations are validated and real, all updating. Use the browser tools extensively to check this. Okay. Newspaper. Writing more. Special numbers. Writing more. Density paper. Writing more. Cursor also with something like a browser within its IDE. But here's that anti-gravity grabbing the real Chrome. Headless terminal agents, Claude Code, Codex, Droid, etc. style, Hermes. They have access to Playwright, all these browser methods as well. So sometimes it's kind of a frustrating, indirect way to get at information through this rendered or emulated browser interface. Other times for working with existing and making new websites and web objects, it's super effective. So here's the chain of actions. Oh, clicking on that one. Maybe a sign-in issue. Oh. Pick right back up. Just, you were disrupted. Continue now. Bye. Okay. Tripled the pros in bioscales. And ideally, there might be a brief moment during a live editing where a top level /run option D, where this catches a paper in an unrenderable form. But if you look at the kinds of edits that are made, they are always end-to-end within a compliant Markdown file. So at least for modifying the manuscript, even if you were to have coding agents that were tracking their Git commits at the level of the line, every single commit should be within the syntax and semantics of the repo and project. So every single stateful update to the manuscript is going to stay within the zone of renderable PDF. So whether the velocity of commits was 1 per month, or whether you had multiple work trees and merging on the manuscript, you could always just snap render with one command the most updated run. And it's like editing the code. You might have a few parts where you're between full refactors, but similarly, keeping this idea of like a renderable, runnable, validated, interpretable, configurable end-to-end from the first start of the project, including starting up a project. And I've seen this multiple times by myself and other people in this and in kind of related areas, bringing the old project, all information, into one of the folders, like a transcript from a conversation or a rant or a prior version of the document, and then saying, drag it in. Here's my prior work on this topic, reformat it, refactor it into this project format. And then it will kind of fill in the gaps and add the project tests and all of that in a pretty useful way. So here's like the area handbook. That's being live edited by one of the agents in Cursor, but still called through anti-gravity, it rendered. So keeping the keeping it working end to end is very helpful. And then the output folder, like the very top, the folder here is just the copied outputs, just so that you can just delete this whole folder with one button, and then but also the outputs get copied in to a project level, so that all the outputs are tracked within the project's possible private Git repo, and then also copied to output for easy deletion, and to kind of like, if this could be, each project could be one of the chapters of your dissertation, and then the output would be the whole dissertation chapter, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Multi-project summary, just reports on the number of projects and such. Let's look at the newspaper. Okay, not any longer since. Okay. If there's a comment in the next 30 seconds, I'll look at it. Otherwise, I'm about to end this. All right. I will push these. I'm gonna let these finish for a few seconds, push them, the current state, to the GitHub, and then probably prune these projects away, or move them into an archive or something, because they were kind of easy come, easy go, and I want to keep the main branch of the repo more like completely functional on just 2 to 3 projects that run pretty fast and verify the real functionality is all working. So all of that, finishing stream. All that is at the doxology template repo. Updated right now. And the projects are in the projects folder. That's where you can make your own privately tracked, get ignored projects and bootstrap off the format. You can or abstract and improve as you see fit. All right. Thank you. Looking forward to people's comments and where they develop things from here. So, see ya. Bye.